I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.
Today, the Dharma Talk title or topic is that I have come up with is the awareness priority. The awareness priority. What I'm endeavoring to tell you or teach you, if you think of yourself as a student, is that you might want to prioritize that part of your consciousness that is aware. It is not about emphasizing that which occurs in the awareness. That's what the ego mind tends to do. Whatever shows up in the awareness, it grasps at it. Whatever shows up in the awareness, it rejects it, or has opinions or judgments or blaming, or whatever shows up, it's not interested. That doesn't concern me. I have better things to do than think about that or be concerned with their problems. But you might want to, if you're a meditator, if you're interested in training your mind along the lines of what this teaching has been doing for a few thousand years, be aware. Very difficult to just intend to do that and have that come about. It seems to be necessary to have a way to do that. And the way that we do that, or the method, what's the fancy new word, is algorithm, is to sit down, hold still, and don't do anything but smell, taste, touch, think, feel. Just very, very simply receive the ideas, the objects. There are objects of meditation. There are objects in awareness. The objects in awareness are thoughts. The objects in the awareness are smells. The objects in awareness are how things feel, how you feel, how your body feels. So the training part of it is to watch the movement of whatever comes and goes without grasping it, if you can help it, without rejecting it, if you can help it, and without turning away or ignoring it. That being said, you may have to observe yourself fail at that quite a bit. That's why it seems to be a via negativa, or a negative way of not this, not this. This has been around for centuries. Neti, 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 coming out of the ancient Indian tradition of the Upanishads, which I'm sure, pretty sure, the Buddha was exposed to. So awareness, the priority here is aware. Just be aware. Don't leave the awareness, that which is the receiving part of the consciousness, for what you think about it. Don't leave it for speculation about where that came from. It doesn't matter where it comes from. The illusion that things come from someplace else is just that. It's an illusion. We're deluded by it. Nothing else occurs. If you think otherwise, you'll continue to torture yourself and those that are close to you, that you claim to love, or that claim to care about. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed how somebody really close to you, how upset with them you can get? You don't want responsibility for your emotions. You want to blame someone for how you feel. Go ahead, keep doing it. Most of the world is doing that. You'll have lots of company. But if you would like to work with that in a way that is more sane, then you could actually just receive whatever happens without comment. And in this way, it seems over time, you begin to see that there's no consciousness, a part of the consciousness that is actually receiving something. There's no part of the consciousness that is holding something. There's no part of the consciousness that is pushing things away. That is happening in dependent origination. There's no self there. Just because we see ourselves getting mad, or we see ourselves standing back or see ourselves, whatever. That part of the consciousness is based on fear and based on hope for something better or control. Uses dependent origination to substantiate, reify, and validate his, her, their opinion, idea, judgment, and so on. The space in which things occur has no position. The space in which things occur has no fear. The space in which things could appear is not separate from your true nature. In fact, and in fiction, it is your true nature. And if you don't know what I'm saying when I say in fact and in fiction, then ask me about it. Sit there and listen to me say something that doesn't make any sense. And well, maybe Sokuzan means something way beyond my ability, probably. What are you smiling at? Don't know? Just humor? Feel picked on?
No, you're very entertaining this morning.
I'm entertaining?
Mhm.
Oh, well, I better change gears. I may be entertaining, but my intention is to help you see the truth so you won't leave here and continue to roil around in your passion, aggression, and ignorance. I'm old, that's just obvious. I don't need to tell you that. 3 weeks from now, there may not be anybody sitting here, or there may be just someone else, and that person may be a wonderful teacher. So I'm very, very interested in helping you see what this is before this teaching person passes away, having spent a long time working on this. You didn't even defend yourself. How disappointing. There's a few other people here I can't pick on because I know you'll stop liking me. I'm really concerned about you liking me. Yes.
You knowing if we can't even see relative truth because we're so tied up in our own story and training, how will we see ultimate truth?
By looking at the relative truth, what comes, what goes, what hangs around without accepting it, rejecting it, or shutting down. That's where the training lies. By watching the movement and noticing maybe for a long period of time how you can't succeed at that. You can't just be a receiver. You can't just smell, taste, touch. You can't just think, just feel. You have to have a story or an idea about it. But the practice seems to be, as I understand it, and as I have been taught and teach others, insofar as I'm able to or I'm allowed to, is you need to look at this and look at this and look at this and not be concerned about what the ego clamors away about saying, well, I don't understand. I don't really get it. This isn't making any sense. Maybe I should try another place that makes sense. Only relative truth makes sense. Ultimate truth does not make any sense. If you want something to make sense, you're in the wrong room. I'm not trying to chase you away. I'm trying to say it in such a way that you'll rededicate yourself to working with your mind as it is. When you turn to the cushion or turn to the wall by sitting on a chair, say it's a bench or a cushion, and you're all alone. You're just looking at that wall. Whatever arises is your training. Don't agree with it. Don't push it away. Don't invent stories about it. But if you do any of that, then as soon as you see it, turn it into something you're observing. This takes years. You cannot do this in 6 months. I don't know if you can even do it in years, but you should intend to do it because who you are, what this actually is, does not come to an end. This lifetime is a flash in the proverbial pan. This is nothing. This has been coming and going, coming and going. You have been here forever. If you want to use the idea of time. Don't believe me. I'm looking at, I don't need proof. I don't need evidence because there isn't anything else. There's just this. I'm looking at this. And if it looks like I'm just full of myself and opinionated, then maybe I am. And if it looks that way to you, then maybe you should do something else. Am I trying to chase you away? No, I want you to stay here and listen to this. I want you to hear this so that when you leave this room and you do whatever's left of the rest of the day, the rest of your life, that you will dedicate yourself to seeing the truth, not believing in Buddhism, not believing in a bunch of ideas or concepts, but find it here. I'm not pointing at a blood pumping organ. Find it right here. This is where you are, right in your own center, the center of your consciousness. Look within, as it says in texts that go back centuries. Look within.
Bowing, what is the priority part of awareness priority?
Just return to the awareness. The priority part is the thoughts arise. You're thinking about this. You're thinking about getting your car, and then just be aware. You could say, you could flash on it. You're getting out, going out the door here. You're walking to the parking lot, and you see that there are thoughts arising. Various things are coming about your car over here, over there, or there's a lot of snow on the ground or on your car. Do I have various things arise that are very practical things. When you do that, just flash on the space in which things occur. That's the awareness, rather than the things that are arising, rather than grasping, rejecting, shutting down the things, adding on a bunch of stories and ideas. Yes.
Bowing, a few moments ago, you were talking about within.
Yes.
How does flashing on on what's happening around us take us within?
Same thing. That's why we need to sit still and look at the wall, or look at the closet door, or the front of the altar if you happen to have one. Just observe that, observe that, observe that. And then when you get up, then that kind of awareness begins to show up in the parking lot. But it's unlikely to show up in the parking lot without some kind of training where you distance yourself from everything. The parking lot, the rest of the room, the rest of the people in the house, hold still. As long as the body is moving, then we're mixing it up with the illusion in such a way that we're deluded by it. But if you train your mind to see clearly, you'll be present all the time. There won't be a past or a future anymore, but you won't notice that it disappears. Because if you notice that it disappears, we're right back to ego, coming to conclusions and feeling like you're making progress. You are not making any progress. There is no progress here. And I'm not saying there aren't Dharma teachers all over YouTube or all over the internet or all over wherever claiming that do this and you'll get that, do this and you'll get that, you'll be more aware, you'll be. Maybe. That doesn't look like that over here.
Bowing, does the awareness give us details that we need attention for, Bowing?
It's interesting the way you're asking that. It brings up for me that it takes you to the particularity that is dependent origination, that is actually you're not separate from. So the very thoughts that need, you could say need, or elicit, or are about the illusion that you're no longer deluded by, you see yourself operating in a choiceless way. You see yourself reaching for this, moving through this door, stopping talking to this person, turning to this person, not because you're making choices, because you think this person needs your attention. It's not a group or a series of thought processes about right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, should or shouldn't. It's just dependent origination, and it is without a self. And to anybody watching you would think you're just like anyone else, except you're not. There's no longer a central consciousness happening there. The consciousness is everywhere, in everything, outside of everything, around everything, as it is. Go ahead.
Bowing, if it shows up as something cloudy, do we need to look for any particularity?
Just look at the cloud. You don't have to look. When I say look within, actually you don't even have to look within. The within and without are just more polarity. You need to start somewhere. If you don't start somewhere, then you get trapped by you get deluded by the illusion that there's something else to do, there's something you shouldn't do. that there's an otherness, that there's a friend and an enemy, which is what the whole world is doing. And some people fuel their whole trip on right and wrong, on control. More?
Yeah, going no further at this time. Thank you.
Question?
Yun bowing. What I heard you say is that this relative situation, which doesn't make any sense, is our training. Is that so?
Yes, just look at it.
And
Just receive. This is what all the senses are doing. They're meant to receive. The smell, sense of smell doesn't produce any fragrances or odors. None of them do, including the mind. The mind does not produce thoughts. That's an illusion that causes us to assume there's somebody who can get ahead, somebody who can fail, somebody operating out of hope and fear. Go ahead.
Yun bowing, then what is the training for? What is being trained? Who's being trained?
Just consciousness. There's no singularity. There's no person that's being trained, although it starts that way. This is the provisional teachings talk about the three poisons, and talks about the six realms of the states of mind and so on. So it talks about it in a relative way so that we can understand it, because that's what we're dealing with in our world of materialism, getting ahead, not falling behind, protecting ourselves, protecting our family. Not that we shouldn't be doing that, but we can get totally swamped by that motivation, and our whole life is spent just protecting something that is relatively in danger. If you don't have enough to eat, you're in danger, but you aren't just you're not just a biological form. You go way beyond that. More?
Yeah, Yun bowing, what is consciousness up to?
It's not up to anything. There is no up. That's part of the illusion that we're deluded by, thinking we can fail or do things wrong or anything. We have a fear of death, a fear of things that we want coming to an end or disappearing, losing control of things. And that won't necessarily, if you realize your true nature, that won't necessarily go away. But that's quite often on the path that people look for them to feel better and feel more enlightened, or living up to more of a standard of how it would be if I saw the truth, what it would be like to do that. There is no like. There's even less. Go ahead.
Yun bowing, I'm wondering if you fear death, if there's different ways to fear death, if there's and how you do it.
So interesting. I think there's no basic fear of death. You're not concerned about it. This doesn't mean that if you're in a situation where you continue to go in this direction, you're going to die, that you want to avoid that. So you're not nuts. You're not like, I don't fear anything, and I'm going to walk off a cliff, and I'm going to drown walking into a burning building because I don't fear death. So it's not like a super ego position that is going to show how fearless they are. It's just that it's not a big deal. You realize that being alive is part of being not alive, but there are two parts to that. Life and death are two names for the same thing. Just like sleep and waking, you're still there, you're sleeping. More about that if you haven't. Good area to ask questions in. I had a dream the other night, a nightmare actually, where I was asking someone about a painting. I was in a dream, and there was two people were talking, and I was curious. I really like this painting. I could probably draw a picture of it or paint it, maybe. It was quite interesting. And a woman was here standing on kind of a platform talking to another one, and I kind of interrupted. Who did you paint this, or who painted this? And it kind of looked at me and then ignored me, went back to, so I interrupted again, and this person exploded at me. and started to come at me like this. And so I backed up, and in the dream, I remember doing this. So that's going to protect me. I remember bowing, and I said, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. And I turned out and went out of the building, and the person was still pursuing me, and the other people in the room were yelling at this person to stop. Don't leave him alone like that. And I took off down the road, and this person caught up with me and put their hand under my shirt in the back. I could feel in the dream. And I thought, well, maybe they're going to poke me with a needle or something, because I don't know what it was, because I have a fear of needles these days. Since then, if you mention the word needle, my peripheral neuropathy starts yelling at me. Needles, so I'm totally petrified in the nightmare. So it's not about not having fear. It's not about that wouldn't come in a dream, or it might not come if someone said there's fire in the building or something, that there wouldn't be some kind of fear about that. Of course there would, but it would be a very relative situation, and it wouldn't elaborate itself into some kind of paranoia about being in danger. The danger would be very, very relative. It would be just like in the dream, that seemed like that was real. And so there was a relative response to that, just like there would be if I actually was in an actual museum, although I might be a little bit more perplexed about why someone would be chasing me out of the museum because I asked a question about the painting. I don't know how helpful that story is, but there it was. Yes, sir.
Sean Bowing, you said that the mind doesn't create thoughts. That's an illusion. What's illusory about that?
The illusory part is that we imagine a thinker. The thoughts that come and go. They don't belong to anyone. There isn't anyone. There is no solid being. But it looks like there is, and it looks like that being aligned with this body. This body keeps that whole illusion going because we seem so real. These are my hands. It's the back of my hand, the front of my hand. I can do this. I can do that. I have say-so about it. I can do this. So a little bit of a relative say-so, but there's not much there. Like, go in and just try to change how you feel. I have no say-so. Stop the way you're thinking and think a different way. You can do a little bit of that, but you don't have a lot of purchase there, a lot of access to structuring that. But if you just receive the thoughts as they come and don't add on a thinker, then you begin to understand dependent origination conceptually, instead of using the concepts to protect a person that is not even threatened out of some kind of paranoia. It takes time. It takes a lot of time, and it takes mind training. As far as I know, I'm not saying there aren't other ways to do it. I'm not even saying you should do it. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should do something else. But because who you are, I'm looking at it. So I don't need somebody whisper in my ear, I think you're on the right track. So on, keep going. I don't need any other, because I'm looking, what you're asking me about, I know exactly what it is. Not like I know and you don't, or something like that. You actually know it too. More about that if you have it. Please don't stop.
Sean Bowing, it seems like the thoughts are very particular to the body-mind complex.
Yes, they are.
It seems, and there's a brain, so it seems like that's generating the thoughts related to.
How do you know that? How do you know the brain is generating anything?
What else is it doing?
What do you mean? What else is it doing?
I mean,
it's a bunch of stuff inside of here. We don't know what that's doing. I mean, even if you go to a neurologist, or you go to a scientist, they're not sure what's going on. They can't tell you what a thought is. And that there's all kinds of speculation around it. They cannot tell you what it is. Can they? You might know a neurologist. I don't know. You see where I'm getting at a little bit?
yeah, a little.
Yeah, it's a speculation, and we conclude things about it. But well, the brain is. People even use the word brain. My brain is doing this. Your brain isn't doing anything. Speculation based on not wanting to be in the know and not wanting to not know. That's not comfortable for the ego mind, the self-centered mind, the narcissistic mind to not know things. So therefore, it will just lean on opinions and judgments based on a relative knowledge that isn't even complete. It's partial. We don't know what thoughts are. We don't know what memory is. We know what it does, and we know when it fails. I can't remember that. It's just every day we just take it for granted that something is happening in a certain way, and we agree. Can you remember that? No, I can't. Can you remember that? No, I can't remember it. We'll try harder to remember that. It's hilarious if you see the way we take our thinking process and our access to memory and our access to thinking. But this is why the ego, the part of the consciousness that feels or thinks or believes that it's somebody aligned with this particular body or this particular body, so powerful in the illusion, but it's deluded. It's not real. It's not actually real. And that's what this person's encouraging you to see what that is, so that you will no longer fight with yourself or fight with anyone or be too concerned at all with what is happening around you by way of trying to control it or stop it. You'll have respect and appreciation for the dependent origination that arises as your thought stream. You'll not be fighting with a life you missed in the 13th century. I'm not kidding you. There's no reason for me to say this. There's nothing in it for me to speculate about anything like that. I don't get anything out of it. I'm just encouraging you to see it more.
Shanji, I'm bowing. So even if it's not the brain, that seems like the thoughts are still related to the body-mind structure.
And they are.
So if that's not real, or the mind isn't, I don't know, generating those thoughts, then how are they so closely tied to the structure that's going on here?
Well, it's just part of dependent origination. But the illusion is that there's separate things that are happening this way, and another separate thing that's happening, that we have some kind of say-so about something, or we lack say-so, where we don't have control over it. That's also an illusion. The whole polarity, this is why this has been addressed in other traditions besides Buddhism, as the whole idea of duality it's just untrue. The dualism of this and that, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, over there and over here. This is an incredibly powerful illusion that keeps us on the world stage, keeps us at war with each other. But it also keeps us at war in the kitchen or in our houses and between two people. Just incredible emotions of fear and possessiveness and territoriality and right and wrong. You know what I'm saying. You experience it. There isn't a person in here that doesn't experience that in some way, and sense that your consciousness or my consciousness or any consciousness doesn't take positions or ideas or judgments and opinions and hold on to those to keep the identity relatively secure. Ego. But that's untrue. Most of the world is operating that way. You don't have to do that. More. Thank you for the questions. Yes.
Wunderbaring. You're saying that we can relatively prioritize awareness, but ultimately
Yes.
there's nothing that we can do.
Ultimately, there's nothing you can do, but the path is to cut into, so to speak, is to take what shows up relatively and observe it, so that you can see the way you push, you can see the way you shut down, you can see the way awareness or consciousness, which is your fundamental nature is consciousness, is aligned with the relative world of manifestation, a human form arising and human form passing away. We get aligned with this, and we believe that we are this being, this human being, but we've been all kinds of beings. And we just happen to be at this particular time in the illusion, in this particular situation. So the idea there is to practice in such a way that you liberate, that the awareness that is aligned with this body, with believing thoughts, disbelieving thoughts, trying to get this, trying to stop this, losing control, getting control, all the relative things. And I could go on and on, and I don't need to. You know what I'm talking about. We are trapped by this. We know people, maybe it's you, but we know other people who are completely swamped by their emotions. And you can look and say, it's not even happening. And yet they're completely bowled away by it. But you can't just say, you shouldn't feel that way. That's not really happening. Nothing is happening. It doesn't work because that person probably would just get furious with you because they know how they feel. But then you might, in your difficult times at 3 a.m, you might be swamped by your emotions and feelings. And then, but yours are pretty convincing because they're yours. They might not be as intense as this other person's, but we believe our thoughts and our opinions and our feelings. And it's not about pushing them away and stopping thinking, stopping feeling. It's to see that it's unreal, that it fundamentally is unreal. And that is the 16th Karmapa said in 1981, nothing happens. It was an ultimate teaching from a Dharma teacher out of the Tibetan tradition, former head of the Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. Powerful statement. Very simple thing, nothing happens. So, but for someone like him to say that, you contemplate that, you reflect on that, and reflect on it, because the teaching there is that what you think is happening is unreal. So the ultimate understanding of that would be nothing occurs. That doesn't mean that you aren't watching the illusion. It just means that you no longer grasp it, reject it, or shut down on it. Powerful. More, go ahead.
Oh, divine. So we can prioritize the awareness relatively,
That's the practice part.
and we can't prioritize the awareness ultimately.
You can, because you are the awareness. So there's no, you do that and then, but there's no conclusion. You don't suddenly feel like I'm more aware now. And then what is that? Prioritizing. And now I'm suddenly here. And now I'm just really fucking aware of everything. That's going to happen. It's better than that, and it's worse than that. Pardon my language expletive. So things just come tumbling out. I don't really choose what I'm going to do or say. So I apologize ahead of time for stuff. Very important to observe. The practice is observe and receive. And eventually, it doesn't mean you'll continue to just be an observer and a receiver forever. Eventually, when the illusion of a self comes apart, then you're done for as a separate being. Then you will function, if you happen to function in the way this old man does, you'll function as a teacher if you have students. And what do I have? 20, 30 students, maybe? Not many. I'm not popular. I don't have any wish to be popular. What do I have a wish for? I want you to see what this is. That's what I would like. Want to do something in this direction? If you feel like I have helped you in some way, find out who you are. You don't have to do anything other than that. Well, you should send money, I guess. For the people back here shaking their heads, yes. Help us with the Community Mindfulness Center, which I know you will do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I'm just saying the fundamental thing is find out who this is. I have students that I only talk to maybe once every 6 or 8 months or a year, some that leave and never come back. I don't know what they're doing. Do whatever they want to do. But find out who this is. Find out so there's no, don't get your identity from me, from the world, from anything. Get it from your own consciousness. So you see. If you do see who this is, you'll feel completely alone, but you will not be lonely. You will not be separated from other, because there won't be any other. Everywhere you look, you will see yourself. It's not a promise. There's no guarantee. Maybe that won't happen. In fact, I can even tell you it won't happen because there are no longer any occurrences. So it can't occur. Why? Because it's already the case. It's just, that's why it's called awakening or Buddha or wake, because you stop covering up your true nature. Fearless. You're not concerned what's going to happen next because you know there is no next. Next is an illusion, just like the past is an illusion. Yes.
When you're bowing a few minutes ago, I think you said that you only have a few students
Yes.
and
20,
you're
25.
not popular. You don't particularly want to be popular.
No,
But sometimes when we're watching the news,
Yes,
you comment on how what's missing is no mind training with
Yes.
all these people. Wouldn't you like to be popular enough to let the world know that
I
this could be helpful?
don't know. That's a relative way, materialistic way of approaching it. I'm not saying it's wrong. There are teachers that do it that way. They can do that. I teach to whoever's in front of me. I've been doing it since I started functioning as a teacher. I sometimes have said to you, I'd like to get in front of as many people as possible because I feel that I have a connection with some people that have maybe never seen me or met me or heard me, that if they were to hear what I have to say, it might help them because we would have a similar wavelength. But what I say here is not popular.
What would it, Divine, what would it, and I'm talking relatively, of course, what would impact would mind training have on our world of
May not have.
hate and anger?
It's the intention. It's not the outcome. If you think it's the outcome, then we're right back to relative truth and trying to stop wars without seeing what the fundamental cause of that is. To try to stop people from doing this, to try to promote peace instead of seeing the nature of war, thinking a war is wrong and we need to stop it.
You know, and so with the upcoming political change in this country that seems to portend a type of war,
Yes.
what should we join that war and resist? Molly?
The way you're asking the question, I would say there's just so many ways you could do that. You can join send money to American Civil Liberties Union and do things like that. So lots of relative things you could do. And I'm not saying those aren't valuable, just like voting would be valuable, but it didn't seem to be enough to cause it to go another direction slightly so that we could have a little bit more reasonable or humanistic approach. It looks like we're getting the other end of the other end of the polarity, just like they got the Russians got when Stalin starved his people, just like when Mussolini, Hitler came in and tried to take over everything. So it's just a polarized. It's just that element of consciousness rising up as a demon. Intense negativity about control. It's the nature of consciousness to do that in a relative situation.
When you're buying, what about the nature of consciousness to help people? Is that
Yeah.
the nature of consciousness?
Yes, it is. It is the sky is the space in which the polarities come and go. The birds fly, the clouds show up, the lightning strikes, the hurricanes, all the turbulence that comes and goes. A beautiful sunset and a tsunami that murders people, kills people. It's just the polarity that here we are in this realm. It's called the human realm, or it's the 6 realms. We're in this. While we're in it, wake up. Yes.
When you're bowing with all the things that you just described, are we seeing the truth as you described them then?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
You say that you don't need anybody on your shoulder telling you you're doing the
No,
talking because you see.
nor do you.
So I guess what I'm asking is, are we seeing the truth now?
So I know what I'm teaching, what I'm saying, but I'm not sure exactly I'm not sure if you're hearing what I'm saying. I'm not sure if you're not adding something to it and interpreting it. So I say don't interpret. Just receive it as it is. Even if you don't understand it, that not understanding has more wisdom in it than some kind of interpretation that actually covers up what is yelling at you down the corridor, saying, not separate, not separate, not separate. See what this is. see what it is. This is what all these images in Tibetan Buddhism, all these angry demons and so on are trying to say, that not separate from anything that arises. You're not separate from it. You're not the same as that, but you're also not separate from it. Most intense negative feeling in your mind, you notice how if you have negative feelings, you want to stop them, you want to explain them, you want to blame someone to do something with it. If you liberate yourself, if your consciousness becomes liberated, you won't care what happens. The sky doesn't have an opinion about hurricanes. Consciousness. It's just the nature of polarities that get very hot, very cold, and very strong and smelly, or very soft and fragrant. Polarity. More.
One more. When you're bowing, this title is the awareness priority.
Yes.
So if we prioritize awareness, are we seeing the truth now?
It's still path. So you have ground path intuition, suffering, awareness path, or meditation, all the ways of that's being talked about. Then you have the fruition of seeing the truth. And since the truth is ultimate, it won't be an occurrence. Nothing will occur. It may be more like things stop occurring, or what is occurring is seen more and more as being illusory or unreal or transparent. Your own nature, your own identities becomes unreal. And one of the ways that can show up is you're no longer concerned about what others think of you, because you realize that they're just all filled up with their projections about everything. You can actually watch someone have a conversation with someone else and just watch someone project onto each other. You don't have access to it. You can't say anything about it necessarily. Even if someone turns to you and asks you about it, you can see that they ask you, but what they're asking you is protected. They don't really want a response. And if they did want a response, and all you would perhaps be able to say to them is, nothing happens. This is not real. Very difficult to see that if we're tied up in our ideas, our thoughts, our opinions, our judgments, our conclusions about everything, our reference points that protect us. Say hello to your dad. Okay. Yes. Question.
Milka Bowing, question from YouTube from Shane. Shane Bowing, you used to often make the point of being aware when you say, there I go again. Is it just about being aware of that, or is there something more to the point about the same?
Just be aware of that without adding anything, without trying to correct that. Like, oh, I shouldn't be saying that. But just notice it, just being aware, let it all fall apart. When I say even the letting part gets a slight credential. I'm just letting things be. Credentials are everywhere. But yes.
Beyond bowing, what can we see before seeing unreal? And I'm asking that because in my mind, if I come in with this, it's unreal, then it's like I'm missing everything before it, and then
I wouldn't say you have to comment a little bit, but you wouldn't have to lecture yourself on it or shout at yourself, unreal. You don't have to do that necessarily, but a little bit of that. Just notice that what arises gets its apparent reality from your ideas, your opinions, and how you work with whatever shows up, what you add on to it. The actual situation itself, if you see with just bare attention what is arising, you won't really know what it is. That doesn't feel good to that part of the consciousness we call ego or narcissism that is protecting. There's too much openness there. That's why when I say you should study the Dharma, you don't have to understand it. Because the understanding is a relative situation that kind of relative understanding of scholarship is very powerful and good. We need that. But actually that can tend to close off the insight or the awareness aspect of consciousness because they're so involved in thinking, analyzing logic and reasonableness and analysis and so on, or judging, evaluating, coming to conclusions. So just receive. Have a willingness to not know what you're listening to. Same thing in conversations with people. You might be getting more in communication from the way a person turns their head or changes their body position than you are from the actual words that they're saying. Yes,
Motiving is willingness to not know the same thing as prioritizing awareness.
yes. Willingness to be the sky. The sky doesn't know what's happening. The sky doesn't know about hurricanes. The sky is the hurricane. So it doesn't know about the hurricane. This is why it's so devastating to the ego, because the self-centered part, because you really can't protect this. Everything is available. All the emotions, all the things that are coming from the past, the illusion of the past. From the future, the illusion of the future. Everything that's coming is after you, if there is a you. And if you see that there never was a you, then everything just goes right on through. You can have feelings that you don't know who they are. You don't know where they came from. They're really intense and they can't find a person. So therefore they run around in the sky, perhaps looking for somebody. You could say it that way. Can't find anybody. So there's no reaction. But you feel that, but the consciousness feels that emotion. This is the beginning of compassion. This is wisdom. The openness is wisdom. And then the compassion is when you realize that you're not separate from any emotion, any feeling that's ever happened to anyone in the 10th century in Kenya. You're not separate from any of that. So all of that can come in because nothing disappears. The only way something can disappear is if it's appeared. And if something has not appeared, it can't disappear. So it's just using relative statements to help you begin to see the nature of your consciousness, which is not yours, doesn't belong to anyone. It's just an astonishing realization to still be walking around as a person, wearing clothes and scratching your head, drinking coffee, eating breakfast. And see, there isn't anyone. There's just consciousness. And it manifests as this astonishing illusion of appearance that is unreal. Yes.
What is there to see before seeing unreal?
A lot of suffering, a lot of difficulty with your dynamic, whatever's happening with you or with the people you're close to. Just watch that without any attribution, any blaming. Very difficult because it looks like she did this, caused that, they did this, and that someone's to blame for something. Doesn't it? Looks like it, but that's part of the unreality. So slowly, what you're doing is slowly making what appears more important than any thought about what appears. So you're watching what appears. Someone comes in and they have a certain tone of voice and they say a certain thing, but you don't do anything with that situation to turn it into some kind of a melodrama or right or wrong. You just listen. You just see. So this is called direct perception. In the 5 skandhas, there's form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. And the third one is sometimes called perception impulse. And you can actually have perception without the impulse to do anything with it. You can have perception without adding thoughts or ideas or opinions or judgments to it. You can just perceive it. But if you do, that's threatening to the ego because the ego wants to know what am I perceiving? Because there's an I. It's unreal. This seems to take a lot of time sitting still, looking at the wall or looking at the floor, just holding very still and observing the I consciousness grasp, reject, and shut down, grasp, reject, and shut down, passion, aggression, and ignorance over a long period of time until you realize this is just a way of talking about it. This may be helpful to you, it may not, until you realize that which is observing the pushing, that which is observing the pulling, there's aggression and passion, and that which is observing the turning away, the distraction, is not doing anything because it's just consciousness. It doesn't come into existence. It cannot pass out of existence. Bodies and minds come and go. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. Consciousness doesn't do anything. Consciousness cannot go away because it is not a period, because the very nature of consciousness is beyond phenomena. It is beyond appearance. It is, you could say it doesn't exist. It doesn't come into existence, can't pass out of existence. Powerful understanding. You could have that. When I say have it, not have it, but you can see that you're not separate from that. You can transcend this world without moving an inch. There are no inches. That's all relative stuff. That's how people make money and get control, especially the control part. Deb.
They're bowing. I get confused or have confusion around no outcomes when you talk about there are no outcomes. I still haven't formulated a very clear question, but could I, in a general sense, just say that or look towards this path as the nature of this path having no outcomes?
Yes.
I'm generalizing, I'm going forward, but I know I have more questions that I can't unravel right now. Deb Bowing.
So the question and the outcome, what is meant by no outcomes, it just means that the production area that the ego is used to having, I do this, so I get that, and I do this and this, and I get that. But if I do this, then I get a negative outcome. But if I do this, and I'm not saying that the relative teachings or the provisional teachings don't talk a lot about that. The second noble truth is, the first one, of course, is suffering, and the second noble truth is because you want something else, you're going to suffer. There's just a very simple statement about that is relatively very true. And so the Buddha had to start somewhere. It took a while before he began to say, and I can't quote chapter and verse here, but nothing really occurs. Nothing happens, but we have to start with the consciousness as it shows up. So all you really need to do, when I say all, I don't mean to be too simplistic about it, is watch the way we push and pull. Watch the desire for outcomes. Watch the desire to control outcomes. Watch the whole idea and the second noble truth of craving for something else. That something else could be trying to stop something bad or get more of something good. So very simple, but difficult to do just in the thinking mind. And this is why I say, you don't have to understand it. You just have to look at it, observe it, be aware of it. And the feeling of not knowing what is happening is closer to ultimate knowing or wisdom, or jnana would be the Sanskrit word. You can do this. It's possible. Possible.
Deb Bowing.
Debbie Bowing.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, just one more question. Thank you.
But
So along the lines of the work that I do in advocacy and allyship and going and supporting communities that don't have a voice in the
Yes.
bigger world, it feels like it would be very hard to go into that without the sense of wanting outcomes to happen.
So-
Will that just evolve?
So all I'm saying, let me interrupt you here. All I'm saying is continue to do that. Please continue to do that. It's just that the demand for outcomes, the outcome, if you're working in a relative situation, you can still build, you can't be a carpenter, not build a building. You have to do that. So it's a demand or the requirement. You know, you might be pretty amazed that without a demand for an outcome, you still build buildings. You might build a better building because you're not doing it out of some kind of demand or paranoia or greediness for an outcome. So we're working with this in a very powerful way, which you can participate in the illusion, but you're no longer deluded by it. Therefore, you know the difference between a hammer and a nail. You're not confused by that, and no one can come along and use your fear to manipulate you. You actually know who you are, what you're doing, and you're very confident about it. And that confidence is based on consciousness, not on right and wrong, not on success and failure. You cannot be intimidated by anything, but you would be very, very good at what you're doing. Continue to do that. And thank you, and thank you, and thank you for that. Naveed.
Debbie Bowing. I was wondering, what is the difference? What is the relationship between awareness and intelligence? Bowing.
So, you know, we'd have to go into dictionaries and see what we mean by intelligence, but I would say awareness is an aspect, or is the intelligence that is just open and receiving. So it may not show up on an intelligence test, so it doesn't show up in a relative way so much, though it could. But it's just the very nature, it's the space in which the intelligence can come and go, or the insight into a particular situation relatively, or the intelligence that figures something out, or has a understanding in a way that one could even create very amazing algorithms to manipulate large swaths of information in such a way to fundamentally help people or fundamentally hurt people. So I'm just saying that my understanding of it, the awareness is just a space, the spaciousness, an aware spaciousness of what is coming and going without grasping what is coming and without rejecting what is coming, without chasing after what is going or without ignoring what is going. More?
All right now, thank you.
Yes.
On divine, Rayhan has been wanting to ask.
Rayhan, go ahead.
Thank you, Rayhan bowing. I have a few questions. One is, what is dependent origination?
So dependent origination is a way of, the fancy word is pratikya samutpada. And so it just means that anything that shows up as a singularity is actually not singular. It is actually dependent on everything else for the illusion of its appearance in the spaciousness of consciousness or the spaciousness of awareness. So it's not independent. You can't, the simple way of talking about it, but it's not complete, but it's very simple to say you can't do away with the tree that this came out of because it's made of wood. You cannot do away with the hand that fabricated this, and you cannot do away with the hand that's holding this up, or you cannot do away with the voice. You can't separate everything out from that. So dependent origination is a very specific teaching. It was around before the Buddha showed up, but the Buddha talked about it also. It just means there is no self anywhere. There's no solid separateness. It also doesn't necessarily say that we're all one either. That's another misunderstanding. We're neither one nor are we separate. That's why it's so difficult to grasp intellectually or conceptually. So, but there's attempts to use that teaching of dependent origination to help us see that the illusion is convincing because it looks like this caused that, caused that. This is untrue. Karma is there and it needs to be looked at, but it's fundamentally just a perpetuation of the illusion of otherness. So we're not saying that striking a match won't start a fire. So that very simple cause and effect, but it's more than that. Where does the match come from? Where does the whole idea of heat even come from? It has no source. Nothing has a source. But this has to be seen in consciousness, not just with the intellect of thinking, although someone with a really powerful intellect can spend their whole life writing books about dependent origination and never even get close to what dependent origination is as a teaching in consciousness. More?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that raises a few questions about free will, but I won't ask them yet. I'll go to my second question, which is, can someone change their karma?
Yes. Yes, I'm changing right now. I was not going to do this, but now I'm changing my karma. Now I'm changing my karma. But see, I'm just showing off. So I'm saying, look, I have free will. I can do this. I can start to chew on my kotsu. So I can do all kinds of things. I can use all kinds of silliness to show that I have free will. But this is just spinning around inside the illusion. There's no solid self there. And that is all the operation of ego to appear like karma is being changed. This doesn't mean that you can't, if you're addicted to a drug or to alcohol or to activity of some kind that's harmful, that you couldn't stop that or change that. Yes, there's some ability to change that, but you can't fundamentally go in and you can't make fundamental changes in it by some other kind of activity. The only activity that I can think of that actually fundamentally will help you is to do less. In other words, meditate, sit down, hold still, don't do anything, and just watch the movement that has been coming up for lifetime after lifetime in your mind stream that keeps pulling your mind through hope and fear this way, that way, this way, that way. So a little bit, but not very much. Don't have a lot to say so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Bowing.
certainly. Yes.
Is there anybody else on Zoom that has a question?
I can take one more question on, especially on Zoom, if there is someone. On those, making sure I give everyone a chance to ask a question. And then I'm going to,
Are you saying that consciousness and space are the same thing? Bowing.
who's asking the question?
Andrea, bowing.
Okay. No.
Andrea, bowing. What's the difference?
You separated them before you asked the question. And then you ask the question, and then I say no. And then you're imputing that there's some kind of difference. I don't see any difference there, but they're also not the same thing. There's no difference, but they're not the same thing. This has to be seen in consciousness, because if you try to do it with intellect or with concepts or with judgments or evaluations, then we get caught up in that net. The net of what? Of the illusion, of the illusion that we're deluded by. And how are we deluded? We're deluded into thinking that we're over here seeing something over there, or we're over here thinking about something that's over there. Just like we just go on and on and on. What I'm suggesting or recommending is you spend quite a bit of time sitting still by yourself, looking at the floor, looking at the wall, or looking at something where nothing is moving, and watching what continues to move in the mind stream, so you can so the knot in the mind stream can begin to unravel, because it will do it all by itself, just by being observed. Awareness, awareness, awareness. Thank you so much.
I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.